I had that big dream of wanting to do a comic book. And it was really driven by being inspired by wanting to do our own Batman comic book, our own X-Files story, but to set it in the Philippines. And it was greatly inspired by growing up with a father who told me, may aswang sa labas ng bintana. Go to sleep, the aswang will eat you.
Budjette Tan joining us all the way from Denmark. Hello and welcome to Jannelle. Thank you so much for making time.
Thanks for inviting me, Jannelle. Thank you so much.
I guess the first question is why Budjette? Where does the name come from? It's so interesting.
Yes, and it's a very strange spelling of budget, which makes people assume that it's Budjette or Budjette. Or the other one was Buhete, which was, I think, I don't know where the guy got that, but he called me Buhete. But yes, it is your typical combination of names, because my dad's name is Buddy and my mom's name is Budjette. So on the day I was born, my dad said his name will be Budjette.
And your name is now being tossed around. It is now being a household name, especially for anime fans because of Trese. Congratulations. It is such a big hit. #1 in 19 countries on Netflix. How are you feeling? Was it something that you imagined it would be?
That has been the toughest question to answer, Jannelle. It still feels like we're floating, or still feel like it's that there's a sense, some part of this is not real. It's fantastic to know that it did get into so many countries. I think what I was just hoping for was sana mag #1 sa Pilipinas. But yeah, it's great to know that other people around the world have started to find it interesting enough to watch it and share it.
Let's take a step back now. I want to get your reaction, and if you can take us through your emotions during that time when you first heard that it was going to get picked up by Netflix to be produced as an actual anime feature series. When did you first hear that? How did you feel?
The official announcement made by Netflix was, I think, November 2018. At the beginning of that year, our producer, Tanya Yuson, was already chatting with me and saying, we've met with Netflix. They called for another meeting. We're meeting with them again. But to take you back, that's the same thing that was happening to me and Tanya for 10 years. Right? So I met Tanya 10 years ago, and she and her partner Shanti Harmain has been pitching Trese throughout all this, for a decade. So that's the regular conversation we would have on chat. She would say, we met with this studio. They like it. They want to see it again. And then, they don't like it anymore. So in a way, there was that feeling of like, really Netflix wants it? And then I think it really hit me on the day they announced it. So I knew they picked it up. I knew that Netflix said, yes, we like it. We want to produce it as an anime. And funnily enough, I think it was announced on the day of my birthday. And since that was afternoon in Singapore, by the time I woke up, morning time in Denmark, when I got out of bed, my wife says, "Have you checked your phone?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Trese's all over the news." And when I checked, that's when the announcements were coming in, and they were like, "Congratulations" from family and friends. So yeah, it was an unbelievable moment back then, and it still feels unbelievable.
I'm getting goosebumps as you recall your experience, right? So it was unbelievable back then, and then I can relate to like how maybe you were cautiously optimistic. You were hearing that Netflix was interested, but you weren't really believing it until they made the official announcement, right? What about when you first saw it? When you
Oh.
first saw it, your story come to life, your story that you've been working on for years, what was that like?
So that was a special occasion because what Tanya did along with Jay Oliva was that they called me on a Zoom call, and they showed me the first episode. So this was like weeks before it came out on Netflix, right? So I think they recorded me. I think they probably recorded me with my mouth just open, or just my mouth just really big smile, or it's either that or my jaw drops. It felt like a dream. It felt like a weird combination of being in a dream and experiencing déjà vu, because suddenly the words that I wrote, the images that Kajo drew, were suddenly in front of me, and that's why I was like saying, how come it feels so familiar? And I just had to remind myself, oh wait, we made this, we wrote this part. And even right down to hearing Shay Mitchell and Liza Soberano say those lines.
Boys, time to go hunting.
Tahan na. Ligtas ka na.
That's the voice in my head. When I write Alexandra's lines, she has that very deadpan, very matter-of-fact way of speaking. So it was very dreamlike to see our creation suddenly talking back to us.
You mentioned Jay, no? And Jay was here not too long ago also talking about his own journey with Trese, right? But he did say that you and Kajo had been writing this, distributing photocopied version, started in 2005. Can you take us through that journey with Trese, your inspiration behind it, what pushed you to start it, and what kept you going?
I met Kajo actually back in 1994 or 95. And at that time, I was already fresh out of college. Kajo was still in high school, I think. And fresh out of college, I had that big dream of wanting to do a comic book. And thankfully, I met other people who had the same dream. That back in '94, we became Alamat Comics. But a lot of those, we were young, we did not have good business sense. So a lot of the comic books we created did not, last after 1 or 2 issues. And funnily enough, Kajo started to work for another comic book group. But whenever I needed help for something related to advertising, which is where I ended up, or somebody would contact me and say, can you write a comic book about this topic? Usually I ended up working with Kajo. Yeah, so there was that working relationship with Kajo, but we never made our own comic book. So cut to 10 years later, and at that time, I guess it felt like I had already done as much as I could in creating my own comics, and none of them were successful. And Kajo sent me a text message. He said, "Budge, do you want to do a comic book? Let's do a comic book together." But then he sent another message. Kasi dati 140 characters pa lang pwede mong padala. You can't send a long one on your Nokia, right? So he said, let's do a comic book. Let's do a monthly comic book. And we were working in an ad agency, which was very, we had a lot of overtime, and there was not enough time there was no time for a social life if you're in an ad agency. And I said, that's impossible. We can't do, I don't think we can do one book. I don't think we can do a monthly book at all. And he said, well, if you can give me a 20-page script, I will finish it in 20 days. And he said, I will spend 1 hour of each day drawing 1 page. And what Kajo usually did was he drew it during lunchtime. So he would quickly eat his lunch, and then he would start drawing. And I said, okay, let's give it a try. And I dug up, so he said, give me any script you've got, as long as it's 20 pages. And I dug up an old script that I could never finish, which was Anton Trese supernatural detective, monster fighter, aswang hunter. The concept was there. So I sent Kajo a script of Anton Trese, the detective. Kajo, and true enough, in 1 hour, Kajo drew it, emailed it to me, and I looked at this drawing, which is a fantastic drawing of Anton fighting the aswang. But something clicked in my head, and I said, why does this guy look so familiar? Why does this guy look like every single action hero we've seen? And me and Kajo were fans of Batman, we're fans of John Constantine. So I just felt like he looks like your typical action hero. And so I texted Kajo back. I said, what if Trese was a woman? And then Kajo texted back, that would make her so badass, was his reply to me. And within the same day, he emails me a sketch of Alexandra Trese with a haircut, and that intense look on her face. And we, I never asked for any changes. It was like I saw it and I said, okay, that's our character. That's going to be our lead character. And it was really driven by in being inspired by wanting to do our own Batman comic book, our own X-Files story, but to set it in the Philippines. And it was greatly inspired by growing up with a father who told me, may aswang sa labas ng bintana. Go to sleep. The aswang will eat you. It was growing up, walking around our village. My aunt would tell me, magsabi ka ng tabi-tabi po. And I say, why? may duende dyan. Magsabi ka ng tabi-tabi po. So it was interesting reflecting on it. It felt like Manila is such a magical place to have, a bit dangerous, but magical to have that, in a modern day setting, that people still believe in such creatures. So I wanted to tell a story that just mashed up all of those influences and all of our childhood stories, but to tell it as a detective story.
It sounded like it was quite easy, but not really, because you actually made the time for it, took the time for it, especially Kajo, right? What kept you going? Because I know I worked for a little bit in McCann Erickson in the Philippines in advertising, and
Yes.
it was so tough. I was at that time I was doing I was starting my sports casting career also in the Philippines.
Yes.
So I didn't have time. You're right. Like you think that you would finish at 5, but no, you're always being asked to do overtime. And even the weekends, there are shoots in the weekends that you can't skip. So you basically had no time. And if you wanted to do something else, which is your comic book, you had to make time for it. What was pulling you into that direction that made you keep going?
I had reached a point when I realized that I still loved making comic books, right? Despite the failures, it made me want to put aside those failures, to say, okay, I lost money producing those comics. I made a comic book and nobody read it, or people read it, but no one bothered to even send us an email to say if it was nice or not. And I think the nice thing that with Kajo's challenge was, we didn't think of what would happen next. The only thing we focused on was, let's tell a story and let's get it done. Will this sell or not? We don't know. Will this become a hit or not? We don't care. We just wanted to do something that no one else could do, to tell a story that no one else was telling. And then we took it from there. So during the first year of Trese, it was really mostly that. I mean, we were selling Trese for 30 pesos. We photocopied it, sold it for 30 pesos, and we were happy when we got sold out at a Comic-Con. And it was like, I texted my mom. I go, Mom, we sold 30 copies today. So, tuwan-tuwa na kami nun, di ba? Parang, nakabenta kami 30 copies. Kajo would do it during lunchtime. I did it at night. So I would work on writing Trese after everything was done. People would have usually left the office by then. So I would still be writing at my desk at that time. But the thing was, when we had enough stories, then came the second phase of the work, which was to pitch it. So we then went through that process of like knocking on publishers' doors and pitching it to this people and that people, until finally we found someone who was willing to take a bet on us, to take a risk on us. And thankfully that was Vizprint. And they were also the kind of people that were risk takers. So they were the ones who took a chance on Bob Ong, on Manix Abrera, on Carlo Vergara. And those are the types of books you didn't see being published by the other publishers at the time. So when I saw them release those kinds of books, as well as the horror books of David Hontiveros, I thought, wow, this publisher is different from all of the other publishers. Maybe they'll take a chance with Trese. And so it was great to find people who supported your vision as well. So I think that's, aside from me and Kajo producing work that we loved, that eventually what carried us over, or what tied us over to the next book, was that we found people who supported our stories.
The first thing that jumped at me was what you said. You just wanted, it was like feeding your soul. Your soul wanted you to pursue that purpose, which is writing stories, right? And you wanted to feed that soul. You wanted to feed your soul regardless of what anyone thought, or regardless of what anyone would think. Now it has come onto the world stage and people are commenting and praising and raving about it. What's the most exciting, most endearing, probably most touching comment that you've heard since about Trese?
A good old friend who is also a comic book geek like me. We used to hang out at comic book stores at the malls. Whenever the new stuff would arrive, we would buy the comic books and hang out there and read it. And we eventually like grew apart, but we kept in touch through social media. So I haven't seen him for years, right? I've only been, we've been keeping in touch with those social media. And on the night Trese launches, he sends me a message and a picture, and he said, "I am so proud of this, I am crying." And he sent me a picture of him crying, right? And it's messages like that from old friends, as well as new acquaintances of people who are just saying they're so blown away. For some people, they've been reading the book for the past couple of years, and for some people, it's the first time they're seeing it. So for them to see Manila shown on Netflix, to see the stories that they grew up with, the monsters that scared them are now also on being watched by people around the world, and they're getting questions from friends of like, what can you tell me more about aswang and the tikbalang? So it's great to now people are coming to us and like saying, tell us more. So it's a mix of hearing from people who've been with us since we started, to meeting new viewers and readers as well.
And that brings me to my second follow-up question. You mentioned writing this story, drawing from personal experiences about how like your dad would say, go to sleep or else the aswang will be there, or your lola or your auntie would say, when you go out, say tabi tabi po. So why do you think has this story connected with so many all over the world, Filipinos and non-Filipinos?
We have a great fascination for the unknown, I think, is the starting point, right? Pinoys, as well as people around the world, love horror. We love to be scared. So I think there's that fascination with the unknown and with what is lurking in the dark. And now it's something they've never heard before, right? To the foreign audience. To the Pinoys, it's like, oh, I know that. I know what they're talking about. Or they would there's always that yeah, the person who knows someone that actually met a tikbalang or or an aswang, right? It seems like you always have that relative, and suddenly they can point to it and say, watch this, watch this. This is what I was telling you about. Structure of Trese, it's a police procedural. So to anyone who's a fan of CSI or X-Files or Law and Order, they might not know what this mythology is about, but they know that there's a crime scene, there's an investigation, there's detection work that's being done, except this time she uses magic spells to do that. And then there is the mystery being resolved in the end. So to people who love crime drama and mysteries, then there's that appeal as well. And I think lastly, one of the things that Tanya Yuson and Jay Oliva did was, at the heart of it, it's about family. It's about a Pinoy family. It's about a daughter trying to live up to her father's expectations of inheriting the family business, but deciding to do things her own way, right? So I think that's a story that's near and dear to Pinoys everywhere.
And it was also, I think, Tanya and Jay's idea to put a cameo, right? How cool is that? What a trip, right? Now you're seeing your face in the anime. And speaking of that, Budjette, everyone's talking about Alexandra, of course, Trese. Everyone's talking about the kambal, right? But for you, and of course, the tikbalang and the aswang, do you have any favorite? Do you have a favorite character?
Especially when I'm writing, I think it's the kambal. I have a lot of fun putting them in the scene, especially when they started to talk. In the earlier issues, they just had like one-liners. There's a line in the book which a lot of the readers were hoping would end up in the anime, but it didn't. And that line was, there was a crime in the club, and then the creature left a big hole in the wall. So one of the kambal said, maybe a higante did it. So the crime happened in the toilet, and then the bad guy left a big hole at the wall of the toilet. And then one of the kambal says, it could have been a higante. And then his brother says, a higante can't fit in a banyo. And that line just, and I just wrote that line. That was a first draft line. And I love that line because it just came out naturally. It felt like, yeah, that's how the kambal would talk. And it didn't get edited out, especially when we did the US edition. It's also great that our US publisher, didn't tell us to you need to change or translate some of these words. I mean, in the comic book, we use kuya, ate, tabi-tabi po. And again, Ablaze was just allowed us to keep all of those Filipino phrases and words in it. It's always surprising for me. I don't know what the kambal will say every time I write them.
That's a revelation. It's also quite interesting to know. And then you also touched on that. I want to ask about the decision to use the Filipino accent in the English versions. Your thoughts on that?
I'm fine with it because that's how we talk. I think a lot of people don't realize it, that we do have an accent. I think they don't realize that it slips in when we least think about it, right? Especially when we get really emotional. I think that's when it comes out. And I think it's also because for the longest time, we have either been watching English dubbed cartoons or it's been dubbed in Filipino. I mean, even for me, if I think back, my favorite cartoon as a kid was Voltes 5. I mean, even though they got theater actors to voice, Voltes 5, so they had really good, diction in English. But there would be moments when you could hear the Pinoy accent, a big bird, big bird. It's like when Little John starts to scream, it just comes out. So The Pinoy can't help it. The Pinoy can never be satisfied. They will find something to nitpick about.
Nonetheless, overall, congratulations on the success of Trese. It is something that you did not expect, but it is something that you're facing now, and you're basking in it. But it wasn't an overnight success, Budjette. And I want you now to talk to the viewers out there who probably have a dream, aspiring artists. I know it's difficult. It's very difficult to get noticed, to get the support to be published. But what would be your advice to them?
Focus on starting the work, and then focus on getting it finished. And not get caught up thinking that, wait, I need to revise this because it needs to be perfect. Because it never will be. And it's when you move on to the next story or the next project is when you realize that you learned something from your last product, right? From the last thing that you made. We are now at this fantastic age where it is so easy to share that work, right? To put it on so many social media platforms. We are now at this age where there is print-on-demand services, right? Even in Manila, we had to spend money to print 1,000 copies because that was the only way to do it back then. It was either an offset printer or a Xerox machine. But now there's available technology to be able to produce work that is of certain quality. And again, thanks to technology, you now can sell your work from your house, right? So the opportunity is there. It just means you need to finish your work. And then after that, find the many ways you can share it and sell it to people.
Love that. And speaking of new projects, what's on the horizon for you? People are asking about season 2 of Trese or other new comics that you're writing. Tell us about that.
Me and Kajo are still working on Trese. We launched book 7 a year ago, or is it 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago. See, we're delayed. We're delayed, Jannelle. We're so late. So we're working on book 8, and we hope to finish that sometime. Late this year. We have started also a book called Trese Bloodlines, where we have asked other comic book creators to write about the world of Trese, and also focusing on her brothers. So the rest of the now you get to see the rest of the family. So for now we're focusing on that. We are hoping that, of course, that the show on Netflix gets enough people watching it that Netflix will say we get a season 2, but we don't know yet. We don't know yet. But that's, of course, if we get the season 2, that's Jay. Then that means that's gonna keep Jay busy all over again. But for me and Kajo, it's just we just want to make more comic book stories, and that's what's on the horizon.
All right, thank you so much from Budjette for joining us as well, all the way from Denmark. How long have you been there now?
We've been here 5 years already.
5 years as an overseas Filipino. Any advice for overseas Filipinos watching us all over the world? I'm an overseas Filipino myself, transplanted here in LA. But you've been Denmark is difficult because the language is different. Did you have to learn the language too?
I tried and failed. My wife did a better job. She passed her Danish classes, and my 5-year-old kid now can speak more fluent Danish than both of us. So I just need to let him learn more, and he will be our translator. We're just thankful that we found a Pinoy community here, that we found a Filipino store selling our favorite food. Of course, priced higher, but it doesn't matter when you're just homesick. And of course, it's eventually finding friends at work. People who are from here and can give you the best advice of how to do this and that, where to go, and also getting to share this journey with people who just transferred here as well. So some foreigners have also come here the same time we came here, and it's great to just share those growing pains with someone and know that that you're not the fool who did this. Oh, he also made that mistake. Our first month here, I kept making a mistake of picking up the wrong products because I didn't understand the label. So it turns out it happens to everyone. Find a little bit of home wherever you are. Whether it's the food, whether it's cooking your favorite dish, no matter how expensive the ingredients are. Reaching out. It's funny how you think there's no Filipinos in your town, but the moment you go to church, it's suddenly all the Pinoys are there. Just so that you know that there's somebody there who just can remind you of home and be able to talk in Filipino again. You miss that, right? I think that would be a way to just push away the homesickness for us.
All right, well, thank you again, Budjette, and we're proud of you. Congratulations, and more power to you. God bless you as you continue your journey.
Thank you, Jannelle. Thank you very much.